A police officer patrolling the docks with his loyal German shepherd hears strange noises coming from a long-abandoned cargo ship. Curious and cautious, he steps inside, only to be stunned by the sight before him. A homeless man lies chained and beaten in the darkness, his eyes filled with terror. Beside him are hidden crates of weapons, evidence of a smuggling ring more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. What the officer and his dog discover that night not only changes the fate of a forgotten man, but also exposes a secret that powerful criminals have tried to bury for decades. What happens next will make you cry and believe in courage, loyalty, and miracles again. Before we begin, let me know where you're watching from. Leave your country in the comments. I'd love to see how far this story goes. Savannah, Georgia, was a city that wore its history on its skin. The cobblestone streets near the river still echoed with wagon wheels from centuries past, while the harbor bore the scars of storms, trade, and war. That evening, as twilight deepened into night, the air carried a damp heaviness salt from the Atlantic mingling with rust and diesel. The cranes at the newer docks were quieting, their silhouettes like giant crosses against the fading orange horizon. But on the eastern side of the harbor, where ships no longer came and the warehouses sagged under years of neglect, silence was heavier than any fog. The tide sloshed softly against decaying wood pilings, and the seagulls had long since abandoned this corner, leaving only the occasional creak of metal or flap of a loose sheet of tin. Walking this forgotten stretch was Officer Michael Rhodes. At 37, Michael carried himself with the slow vigilance of a man who had learned never to underestimate quiet. His uniform, a dark navy patrol shirt tucked neatly into duty-worn cargo pants, fit his lean, broad-shouldered frame with the precision of routine. His face, clean-shaven and stern, was lined more deeply than his age allowed, etched by years of service and grief. His gray eyes held a watchfulness that rarely softened, as though every sound was another test of judgment. Michael had grown up in Savannah, the son of a shipyard welder and a schoolteacher. The harbor had been his childhood playground, the place where he and his best friend Daniel Price once played cops and robbers among the containers. Years later, Daniel had been his partner in the Savannah Police Department. 2 years ago, Daniel had died during a drug raid that went wrong. One of those chaotic nights where bullets flew, radios screamed, and life drained from a man's eyes before you could call for backup. The memory haunted Michael still. He carried it in his silence, in the way he hesitated before entering dark places, and in the way he looked at Daniel's widow when he brought groceries to her doorstep. And more than anything, he carried it in the dog walking beside him. Bruno was a 10-year-old German shepherd, his once black muzzle now frosted with silver. His sable coat glistened in patches beneath the glow of the harbor lights, though scars marred his hind leg from a knife wound sustained years earlier. His left ear folded slightly forward, a permanent reminder of the night Daniel had fallen. Bruno had been Daniel's canine partner. When Daniel died, Michael couldn't bear the thought of the dog languishing in retirement kennels. He brought Bruno home. Their bond was unusual. Michael never replaced Daniel with Bruno, nor did Bruno ever treat Michael as a substitute handler. Yet in their own quiet way they carried Daniel together, Michael with memories, Bruno with loyalty. The dog seemed to know when Michael's hands shook at night, pressing his heavy head into the officer's lap until the tremors eased. To Michael, Bruno wasn't just a dog. He was living proof that the past hadn't swallowed everything whole. The patrol had been routine, too routine. Most nights the East Harbor was deserted. The occasional drifter might camp in a warehouse, but there were no ships docking, no cargo moved. Savannah PD rarely bothered assigning units here anymore, but Michael volunteered. He said it was to deter vandalism. In truth, the quiet allowed him to think, to breathe, away from the chatter of younger officers who didn't know Daniel or the ghosts that still lingered. Tonight, however, the silence was broken. Bruno stopped abruptly at the edge of Pier 17. His body stiffened, hackles bristling. The German shepherd's nose lifted into the damp wind, drawing in sharp breaths. His low growl rumbled deep, vibrating through his chest like a warning bell. Michael followed his gaze. At the end of the pier, half hidden in mist, loomed the silhouette of a massive vessel. Her hull rose like a cliff of rusted steel, streaked with decades of neglect. The faded letters still clung to her stern. Avalon Star. The Avalon Star had been abandoned for more than 20 years. Locals said the shipping company collapsed after corruption scandals. Some claimed sailors had died aboard and the vessel was cursed. Teenagers dared each other to sneak inside, but few ever did. The ship was sealed, creaking, lifeless, or so everyone thought. A faint sound drifted across the water, metallic, hollow, the echo of something dropped or dragged within the ship's belly. It was subtle, but unmistakable in the stillness. Michael froze. His eyes narrowed toward the dark gangway that connected pier to deck. Every instinct told him this was wrong. He pressed his hand lightly to the grip of his service pistol, not drawing it yet. Bruno growled again, louder this time. His paws shuffled forward, claws clicking against the wood planks. His entire posture screamed alertness, tail rigid, head lowered, ears thrust forward. He wasn't barking wildly as he might at a raccoon or stray cat. This was different, focused, purposeful. Michael whispered, "Easy, boy." But Bruno wasn't calming. He paced a few steps closer, then looked back at Michael with insistent eyes, as though urging him to follow. His growl deepened, steady, unyielding. Michael's gut tightened. He thought of Daniel, of all the times Bruno had warned them of danger seconds before it struck. The Avalon Star loomed larger now, her hull reflecting moonlight like dull iron, her silence masking whatever secrets lay inside. Bruno tugged at the leash, pulling Michael toward the gangway. Reluctantly, heart hammering, Michael allowed the dog to lead. The steel structure groaned under their first steps, the sound echoing into the cavernous dark. Bruno stopped at the entrance to the lower deck, paws planted firmly, body trembling with a readiness to fight or flee. His growls echoed softly through the hollow metal corridor, carrying a warning to whatever might be lurking beyond. Michael tightened his grip on the flashlight hanging at his belt. The night had shifted. This was no longer a quiet patrol. It was the beginning of something else. And it started here, at the threshold of the Avalon Star, with Bruno standing guard, teeth bared, leading him toward the unknown. The stairwell groaned under Michael's boots as he followed Bruno into the ship's underbelly. The temperature dropped with every step, the metal walls sweating with condensation, the air dense with rust and something else, an earthy rot that lingered like decay. The light from Michael's flashlight cut through the thick shadows, illuminating flakes of peeling paint and long-forgotten tools scattered across the floor. The ship was old, tired, and heavy with silence, except for the faint sound they had heard earlier. And Bruno's growl, now low and constant. They reached the lower cargo hold, a cavernous space lined with empty crates, dangling chains, and collapsed scaffolding. It was colder down here. Michael's breath fogged slightly, and even Bruno paused, his head swaying as he sniffed the air. Suddenly, the shepherd froze. His nose pointed to a stack of crates near the far bulkhead. Ears pinned, body crouched low, tail rigid. Then he lunged forward, barking sharply, turning left behind a half-crushed metal storage locker. Michael followed fast, flashlight sweeping, and his breath caught. There, barely visible in the gloom, slumped against the wall, was a man. He was bound wrists and ankles tied tight with thick, coarse rope that cut into pale, bruised skin. His head hung low, a mop of tangled graying hair falling over his face. His clothes were in tatters, an old olive field jacket and canvas work pants, both soaked and torn. A thin trail of dried blood ran from the corner of his mouth to his jaw. His chest rose and fell shallowly. "Sir?" Michael called out, lowering his flashlight. "Can you hear me?" The man stirred. A slow, pained groan escaped his throat. He looked up with one eye blackened, nearly swollen shut. The other, bloodshot and sunken, flicked between Michael and Bruno. "Don't move," Michael said, crouching. "You're safe now." Bruno had already stepped forward. Without waiting for command, the shepherd gently approached the man, sniffed around the bindings, and then, gripping the edge of the rope between his teeth, began to chew with surprising delicacy. His movements were slow but determined, pausing only to whimper softly when the man flinched. The man's voice rasped, barely above a whisper. "Dog. Good dog." Michael worked quickly, using a folding knife to help Bruno. As the last of the rope snapped, the man slumped forward, caught just in time by Michael's arm. "What's your name?" Michael asked. "Sam," the man croaked. "Sam Walker." Michael studied his face. Beneath the bruises and grime, Sam looked to be in his late 50s, tall but hunched by hard years. He had the build of a man who once worked with his hand-strong forearms, broad shoulders, but now those features sagged under exhaustion and trauma. "What happened, Sam?" Sam swallowed painfully. "I was sleeping on the dock, down by Warehouse 9. Heard something. Strange. Night crew, at least I thought so at first, loading stuff into that ship." His gaze flicked toward the ceiling. "Crates. Big ones. No lights, no markings. I watched from behind a forklift. What did you see?" "Guns," Sam said, his voice trembling. "I saw assault rifles, maybe more. Then, they caught me." Michael's jaw clenched. This wasn't just a vagrant who'd stumbled into a derelict ship. Sam was a witness, a dangerous one. "Why didn't they kill you?" Sam let out a dry, bitter laugh. "Said I wasn't worth a bullet. Left me here to rot. Maybe they thought the cold would finish the job." Bruno, now seated beside Sam, gave a soft whine and nudged his shoulder gently with his nose. Sam smiled weakly and reached out with trembling fingers, brushing the dog's thick fur. "He saved me," he whispered. "This good boy saved me." Michael reached for his radio but paused. Deep inside the ship, signal might be unreliable, and calling for backup might tip off someone if they were still nearby. He weighed his options fast. "Sam, can you walk?" "I'll try." Michael helped him up slowly. Sam groaned in pain, every movement strained, but he pushed forward. There was grit in the man, something old and weathered but not broken. Bruno led the way back toward the stairwell, ears perked, every step cautious. As they moved, Michael glanced sideways at Sam. "What did you do before all this?" Sam chuckled grimly. "I was a mechanic. Navy. 30 years ago. Did my time, came home, worked the docks. Then, layoffs, health bills, things got tight. Wife passed. Lost the house 3 years ago." "I'm sorry," Michael said. Sam shrugged. "Ain't asking for pity. Just a damn cot and a reason to keep breathing." Michael nodded, respect blooming quietly inside him. They were halfway up the stairwell when Bruno froze again. His body tensed, nose twitching toward the upper deck. Then he let out a soft but urgent growl. Michael stopped. "What is it, boy?" Bruno took a step forward and paused as if listening. The ship creaked faintly, and then above them, a dull clank. Footsteps? Hard to tell. But Bruno's posture made it clear. Something, or someone, was nearby. Michael turned back to Sam. "Change of plan. We're not going up top, not yet." He guided them sideways into a narrow maintenance corridor. It was tighter, darker, but it looped back toward the rear hatch Michael had passed earlier in the patrol. They moved slowly. Michael had his flashlight off now, navigating by faint shafts of moonlight cutting through cracks and broken vents. Bruno led the way like a ghost, silent and alert. At the end of the corridor they reached the hatch. Michael eased it open, checking the exterior. The pier was still empty. Fog had thickened, swallowing the lamplights and casting a ghostly sheen over the water. No vehicles, no movement. Yet, they stepped out. Bruno bolted ahead a few paces, scanning the shadows. Michael supported Sam's weight, guiding him down the gangway. Once they reached the pier, Sam collapsed onto a crate, chest heaving. "Thanks, officer." Michael turned to Bruno, who now sat beside the gangway, tail still, gaze locked on the ship. He wasn't relaxing. His instincts told him the same thing Michael's gut did. This wasn't over. Someone had left Sam there to die, and someone might already know they had failed. Michael pulled out his phone. Out here, he had reception. He dialed dispatch, his voice low and urgent. "This is Officer Rhodes, badge 447. I need medical and backup at Pier 17. One male victim located inside an abandoned vessel, possible witness in illegal arms trafficking. Copy?" As dispatch confirmed, Michael crouched beside Sam again. "You're safe now," he said. Sam shook his head, eyes weary. "Not yet, son. Not yet." Michael didn't reply, because Bruno was still growling quiet, constant, facing the gangway. The fog had thickened by the time Michael guided Sam into the back seat of his patrol cruiser. Bruno hopped in behind him, never taking his eyes off the gangway of the Avalon Star. Michael gave the old freighter one last glance. Its rusted hull vanished quickly into the rolling mist as he pulled the cruiser away from Pier 17 and merged onto the deserted waterfront access road. He kept the windows cracked. The air carried an unnatural stillness, salt, rust, damp rope, and something else, a presence. It crawled up Michael's spine like static. Sam groaned softly in the back seat, his bruised body slumped against the door. Bruno had curled beside him protectively, his head occasionally lifting to sniff at the air. Michael glanced at the rearview mirror and caught the old man's expression. Despite the pain, there was awareness in Sam's eyes. Alertness, not paranoia. He hadn't survived this long by being careless. Michael reached for the radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Rhodes. I'm transporting a witness from Pier 17 en route to precinct. ETA 10 minutes. Suspected smuggling ring. Advise Sergeant Lewis I'll need a quiet room and medical attention for the subject." The static crackled. A reply came through, garbled but clear enough. "Copy that, Rhodes. Sergeant notified. Room 4B, EMS on standby." Michael acknowledged, then clicked the radio off. 2 blocks from the harbor, the streets grew darker. The fog swallowed the amber glow of street lamps. Old buildings loomed like forgotten sentries, and the only sounds were the low hum of the cruiser and the rhythmic creak of salt-eaten metal bridges overhead. That's when Bruno sat up. His ears twitched, nose lifted. A short huff escaped his snout. Michael's eyes flicked to the side mirror. There, barely visible through the haze, was a vehicle. Black, sleek, SUV, no lights. He waited. It followed. Turn for turn. One car back. Michael's fingers tightened on the wheel. "Bruno?" he asked quietly. The dog growled, low and certain. That was enough. He reached across the dash and flicked off his headlights. The cruiser coasted forward, slower now. He turned off the main road and cut through a side alley that curved behind an old fish market long shuttered since the pandemic. He didn't accelerate. He wanted to know for sure. 10 seconds passed. Then the SUV appeared in the rearview again. "Damn it," he muttered, flicking his lights back on and punching the accelerator. Sam stirred. "What's going on?" "Someone's watching," Michael replied. "Someone who doesn't want you talking." He grabbed the radio again, but paused. This wasn't an official pursuit, not yet. He didn't want to alert anyone over open air, not when he didn't know who was listening. He needed someone he could trust. With one hand on the wheel, he grabbed his phone from the center console and hit a contact labeled Lopez. The call connected after the second ring. "Rhodes?" came a woman's voice, sharp, a little tired, but alert. "Anna, I need a favor." There was a pause, a soft sigh. "Of course you do. You only call at night when something's wrong." Deputy Anna Lopez had been Michael's academy classmate. 34, Puerto Rican American, with cropped black hair and a gaze that could reduce grown men to confession. She worked county patrol now, mostly the East Blocks. After her husband passed away from a sudden heart attack 2 years ago, she'd raised her 6-year-old son, Mateo, alone, balancing midnight shifts and parent-teacher conferences with the quiet fury of someone who refused to be broken. "What's going on?" she asked. "I've got a witness. Possible arms smuggling ring. He was left to die in the Avalon Star." "Jesus. I think we're being followed. Black SUV, no plates, no lights. East on Sutler, near the bridge." "All right. I'm 5 minutes out. I'll intercept. Don't use radio. They might be scanning." "Copy. You got Bruno with you?" Michael glanced at the dog, who now had his head pressed to the rear window, growling faintly. Yeah, he already clocked them. Good boy, I'm on it. The line went dead. Michael took a hard left, then a right, swerving through empty warehouse corridors. The SUV stayed one turn behind, never speeding, never honking, just shadowing. That told him everything. Whoever was driving was trained, professional. No casual thug followed that precisely. Hold on, he muttered. He swerved into a gravel lot behind an abandoned ship parts supplier. The walls formed a half-square perfect for cover. Michael killed the engine, turned off the lights, and ducked low. Bruno crouched beside him. Stay down, he whispered to Sam. The SUV rolled past the alley mouth and slowed. Bruno's growl deepened. The fur along his back stood on end. Michael reached for the pistol holstered at his side. Then a second set of headlights flared. From the opposite end of the lot, another vehicle turned in, a patrol car, headlights blinding. The SUV accelerated instantly, tires screeching, engine roaring to life. Michael jumped from his cruiser, gun drawn, but the SUV was already gone, disappearing down the hill, swallowed by mist. Anna's car rolled to a stop beside him. She stepped out, her slim figure moving briskly, uniform shirt untucked, a gray hoodie tied around her waist. Her eyes scanned the darkness with that same sharp edge she always carried. You all right? Michael nodded. Yeah, thanks. She approached Bruno first, crouching and giving his neck a scratch. Hey, big guy, still watching his back, huh? Bruno licked her hand once before resuming his perimeter scan. Michael opened the back door, revealing Sam pale, shaking, but conscious. Anna's expression changed. Is that the witness? Michael nodded. Name's Sam Walker. Saw the operation last night. They beat him, left him to die. Anna's lips tightened. They know he survived now. I think they knew the moment we stepped off that ship. Anna looked at Sam. You're safe now, Mr. Walker. I'll stay with you until you get to the station. Sam nodded faintly. Thank you, ma'am. Michael turned to her. Can you shadow me back? No lights. If they try again, I want someone watching my back. Anna smirked. I thought that's what the dog was for. Michael didn't smile. Tonight, I need both of you. They got back in their vehicles and pulled away from the lot. Bruno remained upright, head tilted back toward the road, watching. Michael drove the rest of the way in silence. Behind them, Anna's car stayed one block back. This time, the fog held no shadows. But Michael knew better than to believe the danger had passed. The precinct walls were quiet at this hour, the usual chaos of the day shift replaced by soft footsteps, humming fluorescents, and the occasional ringing phone in the distance. Michael stood in interview room 4B, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the one-way mirror as a nurse finished tending to Sam's wounds. Bruno sat beside him, alert but calm, his ears flicking with every sound in the corridor. Sam sat hunched in the metal chair, flannel shirt draped over his shoulders, chest bandaged and face cleaned of dried blood. There was something in his posture, an exhausted defiance like a man who had seen too much to care what happened next, but not enough to walk away. Michael stepped in as the nurse left. You holding up? Sam nodded slowly. Better than I should be. Michael pulled up a second chair and sat across from him. Bruno padded in and lay at Michael's side, eyes on Sam. I need to know everything, Michael said quietly. Every detail. Anything you remember. Sam gave a humorless smile. Yeah, I figured. He reached into the inside pocket of his torn jacket, his fingers fumbling slightly from stiffness. From within, he pulled out a torn, creased piece of paper, half soaked, the edges curled, but the ink still visible. He flattened it gently on the table. Michael leaned in. It was a hand-drawn layout of the Avalon Star, or at least part of it. Several rooms were marked off in red ink small circles drawn around sections of the lower cargo deck. One area, in particular, was heavily scribbled, as if Sam had meant to emphasize it. Faint notes were scrawled in the margins. One said double walls, another sealed hatch. In the lower corner, a rough drawing of a crate with the letters M15 was underlined twice. Sam tapped the page with one crooked finger. I made this after the first night, before they caught me. I saw where they were going, what they were carrying. Michael looked at him. You're sure it was weapons? I saw the crates open, son. Those weren't fishing supplies. Russian rifles, packed in foam. Grenade launchers. Some boxes didn't even have English labels. Michael studied the map again. You drew this from memory? Sam shook his head. Part memory, part instinct. I've been around ships long enough, you know when a wall sounds hollow. You know when footsteps echo wrong. Bruno lifted his head then, sniffed at the table. His nose touched the edge of the map. He snorted softly, then pressed his nose again into the scribbled section with the double walls. Michael raised an eyebrow. You remember something, boy? Bruno whined and nudged the paper once more before lowering his head. Sam chuckled. Smart mutt. He knows that spot's worth something. Michael folded the paper carefully and slipped it into his jacket pocket. You can't stay here tonight, he said. If they're watching the station... Yeah, Sam nodded, rubbing the side of his neck. I know. Michael hesitated, then reached for his phone. He scrolled until he found the number under P. John, Safe House. He stepped outside to make the call. Pastor John was a wiry old man in his 70s with a soft Mississippi drawl and a spine forged in civil rights marches. He ran a converted garage shelter on the edge of Savannah, just off the old trolley line, where he took in veterans, addicts, and anyone the system forgot. The place was nothing fancy, 4 cots, a space heater, and a dented coffee pot, but it was warm, discreet, and always watched over with quiet faith. John picked up on the second ring. Michael, that you? Evening, Pastor. I got someone who needs a safe bed for a few days. There was a pause. He in trouble? He's in danger. Bring him. 20 minutes later, they pulled into the gravel driveway beside the small garage. A light buzzed faintly above the door. Inside, Michael saw the familiar wood-paneled walls, the battered couch, and a few handwritten scriptures taped beside the doorframe. Pastor John met them at the entrance wearing an old army jacket over a plaid shirt, eyes bright beneath gray brows. Evening, officer, he greeted with a weathered smile. Michael introduced Sam. John took one look at the bruises and nodded without a word, leading him inside. Bruno followed behind, scanning every corner, then settled by the front door. Michael pulled John aside briefly. Keep him off the grid. No visitors, no phone. If anything feels off, call me. John's face grew serious. You know I will. Michael gave Sam a brief nod. I'll be back. And, thank you. Sam managed a weary smile. For what? For staying alive. Michael left quietly with Bruno, the patrol cruiser rattling softly down the street. But his mind wasn't on Sam anymore. It was on the hospital. His mother, Lucille Rhodes, had been in palliative care for months now. A stroke in January had stolen most of her speech and left her paralyzed on the left side. She'd once been the strongest woman he knew. Tall, sharp-eyed, never afraid to speak her mind even when it cost her friends. Growing up, she worked double shifts as a waitress to keep the lights on. Never complained, never asked for more than time with her son. He hadn't seen her in 3 days. He hated how the case kept pulling him away. And yet, he knew deep down that she'd be the first to tell him not to stop. He parked in front of the hospital, staring at the entrance lit by flickering street lamps. Bruno let out a soft sound from the passenger seat, resting his head on the armrest. I know, Michael said. Just for a minute. Inside, the hallway smelled of antiseptic and fading lilies. A nurse passed by with tired eyes and a clipboard. He made his way to room 208. His mother lay by the window, eyes closed, face pale but peaceful. A small music box played faint classical notes on the dresser. He didn't speak, just sat beside her, Bruno at his feet. The dog rested his head on Michael's knee. I found something, Ma, he whispered after a while. Something big, and I don't know how deep it goes, but I think I'm meant to see it through. There was no reply, only the quiet click of the music box as it wound down. When he finally stood, Bruno rose with him. Outside, the air had shifted. The fog had thinned, but a cold breeze moved through the trees. Michael reached into his coat and pulled out Sam's map. He unfolded it slowly under the glow of the streetlight. The ship still held secrets, crates still hidden, and someone, somewhere knew exactly what was buried there, and they would kill to keep it that way. The harbor was darker this time. Not just the hour, but the mood. The kind of darkness that felt thick in the lungs, not just on the skin. Michael parked the cruiser 2 blocks from Pier 17 and cut the engine. The fog had returned, not as a blanket, but as long, creeping tendrils slithering over the ground and curling between the tires of parked trucks and rusted containers. Beside him sat Deputy Ana Lopez, now dressed in plain black cargo pants and a gray tactical sweatshirt under a light windbreaker. Her hair was pulled into a low bun. Her face looked drawn, not from fear, but fatigue lines around her eyes deeper than they were a year ago. She glanced at her watch, then at the dock beyond. "Sam's already in position?" Michael nodded. He insisted. "He's not exactly Navy SEAL material, Mike. He knows the layout better than we do, and they know his face. If they see him, they'll go straight for him." Anna sighed, but didn't argue. She had grown up trusting her instincts, and something in her told her Sam had one last useful part to play before the weight of life caught up with him again. Michael reached into the back seat and unlatched the kennel gate. Bruno stepped out with silent precision, every muscle ready. The 10-year-old German shepherd had been unusually quiet on the drive. As soon as they'd neared the harbor, his nose had begun twitching again, ears shifting with each gust of wind. He padded forward beside Michael, eyes alert, tail low but steady. They moved fast through the shadows, cutting behind broken cargo lifts and discarded netting. When they reached the base of the Avalon Star's gangway, they crouched in silence. The ship sat still, but no longer abandoned. Lights flickered dimly behind a broken porthole near the bridge, just like Sam said. They were back. Anna reached for her radio. "Let me check in." She stopped mid-sentence, frowned, and checked her jacket pocket again. Michael saw it first, the empty clip on her vest. "Radio?" "Gone," she whispered. "Must have fallen when we scaled that fence by the church lot." Michael cursed under his breath. "Backup?" Anna looked at her phone. "No signal here, not this deep in the yard." "All right," Michael said. "We stick to the plan." From the north end of the pier came a sound scraping metal, followed by a sharp clang. Then a voice gruff, male, laced with annoyance. "I told you to double-lock that crate. Boss doesn't want surprises." Anna looked toward the sound. "They're already unloading." Michael turned to Bruno. "We need to draw them off. Can you do it, boy?" The dog gave a low bark, as if insulted by the doubt. Michael pointed toward the opposite end of the ship's main deck. "Lead them that way. Circle back when you can." Bruno took off like a shadow, slipping into the night with a grace honed by years of training and instinct. Moments later, chaos erupted. A sudden, explosive burst of barking cut through the harbor's stillness. Sharp, wild, urgent. Then came shouted voices. "What the hell? Was that a dog? Where is it?" "He's over there, behind the crate." Michael and Anna didn't wait. While the thugs shouted and clamored toward the noise, Michael slipped up the gangway and turned left into the corridor leading to the ship's bridge. Anna covered the rear, pausing briefly to check the stairwell that led to the lower deck. Inside the captain's quarters, the air was thick with oil and mildew. The floor creaked under their weight. Michael spotted the crate immediately half covered with a tarp, but the serial number was unmistakable. M15. The same code Sam had underlined on the map. Michael knelt and carefully peeled back the canvas. Inside were black metal cases, sealed but marked with Cyrillic stencils. He opened one. Rifles. Brand new. Grease still fresh. A case of grenades tucked beneath. "Got 'em," he whispered. Anna pulled out her phone and began taking photos, moving quickly but precisely. Then she looked up, pale. "Mike, someone's coming." Voices rose from below. Heavy boots on metal stairs. They had maybe 30 seconds. Michael pulled a flash drive from his coat standard issue precinct backup. He snapped several wide photos of the cargo hold, zoomed in on the Russian markings, and stuffed it back into his pocket. Then came the thud of boots outside the bridge door. Anna raised her sidearm, lips tight. "They're here." But before the door opened, another sound rang out from the deck. Bruno's bark. Loud, fierce, then what sounded like a man yelling in pain. "Something bit me. I think it's a damn police dog." The men outside turned toward the noise. Anna grinned. "Your boy's earning his dinner tonight." They slipped out the back hatch, dropping onto the deck below and hugging the side rails as the smugglers charged past in pursuit of Bruno. When they reached the gangway, Michael signaled. Sam was there, sitting on a crate, his jacket draped casually, pretending to drink from a tin cup. When the first smuggler spotted him, he shouted, "That's him!" Sam bolted, tossing the cup and running like hell toward the east fence. He wasn't fast, but he didn't need to be. Just visible, just loud. The men chased. As they disappeared behind the containers, Michael and Anna turned and sprinted for the cruiser. Bruno was waiting by the tire, tongue out, panting heavily. Anna opened the back door. "Come on, hero." The dog leapt in. Michael climbed behind the wheel. "We've got everything we need." Anna pulled out her phone. "Let's hope backup is still listening." As the cruiser pulled away from the docks, sirens finally flared in the distance. But by the time they arrived, the Avalon Star was silent again, and the cargo hold was empty. The plan was to scoop Sam up 2 blocks east of the Avalon Star near the chain-link fence by the old trolley yard. Michael's cruiser cut through the fog with headlights off, tires skimming over cracked asphalt. Sam had run his part perfectly visible just long enough to bait the smugglers before ducking behind a dumpster in the alley. But now he was running for his life. Michael saw him burst from between 2 stacked containers, limping hard, clutching his ribs. Behind him, 2 figures emerged, dark silhouettes with weapons drawn. Michael punched the gas. "There, on your right!" Bruno barked in the back seat, his nails scrabbling against the door as the cruiser surged forward. Sam barely made it to the passenger side before Michael slammed on the brakes. The back door flew open and Bruno lunged out, teeth bared, barking furiously, putting himself between Sam and the 2 pursuers. The men stopped cold, startled by the sudden appearance of a patrol car and a furious German shepherd. "Get in!" Michael shouted. Sam tumbled into the back seat just as Bruno leapt back inside. Michael floored it. The smugglers opened fire. One shot cracked the rear window, shattering the glass across the seats. Anna ducked low beside Michael, gun already in hand. "They're not backing down." In the mirror, Michael spotted headlights. A white van had turned out of the shadows behind them, the same one from earlier. Tires squealed. They were giving chase. "They're trying to cut us off," Anna warned. "North exit's a trap." Michael jerked the wheel left, skidding onto a narrow lane between warehouses. "We're going to the loading yard." "Dead end." "I know." The cruiser roared into the open yard and a gravel lot boxed in by shipping crates and chain-link fence. At the far end, the same broken barrier from earlier stood waiting, moonlight glinting off its twisted metal. Michael killed the engine. "Out. Now." They scattered Michael, Anna, Sam, and Bruno diving behind crates and forklifts just as the van skidded to a stop, blocking the only exit. 2 armed men leapt from the back doors, rifles drawn, flashlights cutting through the fog. Sam crouched low, gasping. "I thought I was done back there." Michael didn't look at him. His eyes were on the men approaching, calculating. "You're not done yet." One of the smugglers moved faster than the other, circling toward their right. The other, taller, leaner, kept his weapon up, scanning, advancing. Bruno growled. Michael drew his pistol. Anna did the same. Then the rifle swung toward Sam. Time slowed. Michael shouted, "Down!" Too late. Bruno bolted from cover, a blur of fur and fury. He slammed into the shooter's arm mid-pull, throwing off the aim. The gun fired harmlessly into the gravel. Bruno latched onto the man's wrist with a vicious snarl, dragging him sideways, refusing to let go. Michael took the opening. He fired once, hitting the second man's leg. The attacker screamed and collapsed behind a barrel. Anna closed in fast, kicking the rifle away and dropping her knee into the man's chest, cuffing him with one hand. Michael ran toward Bruno, who was still locked onto the first attacker, blood pooling beneath his teeth. The man was howling. trying to punch and twist free. "Bruno, release!" Michael ordered, calm but firm. Bruno obeyed, stepping back but keeping his body between Sam and the attacker. Michael cuffed the man and rolled him onto his stomach. Silence followed, just the panting of Bruno and Sam's labored breaths. Anna stood, brushing grit from her knees. That could have gone bad. "It almost did," Michael replied, eyes still on Bruno. Sam sat back against a crate, wiping blood someone else's from his temple. "Dog saved my life. Again." Michael knelt beside him. "That's what he does." Moments later, red and blue lights flashed through the fog. Sirens wailed from the street. The yard filled with the sound of approaching vehicles. Backup had arrived. The yard was awash with flashing red and blue as police units rolled through the gates, tires crunching gravel and spotlights sweeping across the fog-draped port. Officers poured from their vehicles, weapons drawn. Voices clipped through radios and shouted commands. But there was no time for high-fives or debriefs. The job wasn't done. Michael helped Sam up as Anna gave a short, sharp whistle. "We've got movement at the docks," she said, pointing toward the far end where shadowy figures were scrambling through the mist. "They're trying to escape by boat." Bruno let out a low growl, ears erect. He took a few steps forward, then looked back, waiting. Michael nodded. "Go." The old German shepherd, his sable coat streaked with sweat and dirt, took off down the gravel, his paws drumming the earth like a war drum. "Move," Michael barked to the officers. "They're heading for the pier. Secure the yard. We're not letting them reach open water." They ran hard, Anna close beside him, Sam struggling behind, limping but refusing to stay behind. Past the rusting shipping containers, down the uneven ramp that led to the docked vessel Avalon Star. Bruno disappeared ahead of them, swallowed by the fog and the growing sound of waves crashing against hulls. Suddenly, the crack of gunfire echoed from the docks. "They're covering their escape," Anna shouted. Michael ducked behind a loading drum and radioed in. "We need Marine units now. Suspects attempting to flee via water armed and desperate." A moment later, the radio crackled back. "Copy that. Coast Guard vessels are inbound. ETA 5 minutes. From the docks, the deep rumble of engines groaned to life. One of the speedboats tied off near Avalon Star jolted forward, headlights cutting through the darkness. Bruno barked furiously from somewhere near the pier. Michael motioned for 2 officers to flank the side while he and Anna pressed forward. Sam, stubborn and pale, found cover behind a stack of fish crates. As they reached the wooden edge of the dock, Michael could make out 3 men loading crates onto the boat-heavy crates marked with fake shipping codes. Another man, bulky and shirtless with tattoos curling around his neck, stood at the edge with a grenade clutched in his right hand. "Drop it!" Michael yelled, raising his sidearm. The man didn't flinch. His hand tensed. And then Bruno lunged from the shadows. He launched from the dock with a snarl, latching onto the man's arm before the pin could be pulled. The grenade fell harmlessly to the wooden planks, rolling toward the edge and splashing into the sea. The man screamed, spinning as he tried to shake the dog off, but Bruno held fast, jaws locked with the strength of 10 years of service and loyalty. Anna charged, tackling one of the smugglers trying to flee the boat. Another officer fired a warning shot, forcing the third man to surrender with hands up. The grenade-wielding thug finally collapsed under the weight of Bruno and a second officer who cuffed him, cursing and spitting blood. In the distance, lights flared on the water, brilliant white beams sweeping low. A booming voice echoed across the bay. "This is the United States Coast Guard. Cut your engines and surrender immediately." 2 Coast Guard interceptors surged into view, cutting across the fleeing smuggler boat's path like wolves circling prey. Within seconds, ropes were thrown, loud commands issued, and the suspects aboard the getaway vessel were taken into custody. From the shore, Michael exhaled, heart pounding, as the reality settled. "They're done." Anna patted Bruno's side, his fur soaked but his eyes bright. "You just saved a lot of lives, old boy." Nearby, Sam had slumped back against the crates again, trembling from adrenaline, eyes wide as he watched the Coast Guard lead the men away in cuffs. Michael walked over, crouched beside him. "It's over." Sam shook his head slowly. Not yet. Those men, they're just pawns. Someone else is running this. Michael didn't press. He let silence speak for a moment. The waves lapped against the dock, cold and steady. Finally, Michael asked, "You ever think about what comes next?" Sam's face hardened. "I've been hiding so long I forgot what next even means." Michael's voice softened. "You don't have to keep running. What you saw, what you survived, could take these people down for good, but not if you disappear again." Sam looked away. "Being a witness makes you a target. Being silent makes you complicit," Michael said. "You told me you wanted to do what was right. That doesn't stop at distracting thugs on a dock." Bruno walked over, flopped beside them, tail thumping once against the wooden boards. Michael glanced down at the dog, then back at Sam. "That dog didn't hesitate to put himself between you and a live grenade. You gonna walk away from that?" Sam didn't answer right away. His hand found the side of Bruno's neck, stroking the fur slowly. His breathing steadied. Finally, he muttered, "You'll protect me?" Michael nodded. "With everything I've got." Sam looked toward the flashing lights, the Coast Guard hauling crates off the boat, the sound of handcuffs clicking shut in the fog. He drew in a long breath and exhaled. "All right," he said quietly. "I'll testify." Michael clapped a hand on his shoulder. "Good. We'll make sure this is the last shipment they ever try to move." They stood together, watching the final crates of smuggled weapons and counterfeit cargo being tagged and logged. Bruno sat tall between them, eyes sharp, still alert. The harbor was quiet now, save for the buzz of radios and distant sirens. And somewhere, buried beneath the weight of evidence and regret, a new beginning stirred, uncertain, but possible. The morning sun broke through the coastal fog like a slow revelation, gilding the rooftops of Savannah's port with a muted golden glow. Seagulls called above the masts, and the salt air was strangely sweet, as if the city itself was exhaling after holding its breath too long. Michael stood at the edge of the dock, his hands tucked into the pockets of his dark windbreaker. His gray eyes scanned the now empty berth where the Avalon Star had once moored, its belly full of secrets. The ship was impounded, its crates catalogued, the evidence now locked in an airtight federal case. Behind him, Bruno lay quietly, chin resting on crossed paws, his ears twitching every so often to the hum of activity nearby. Though 10 years old and streaked with silver, the old German shepherd still sat with the posture of a sentinel, as if daring the world to defy the calm they had fought to restore. The mayor's assistant, a petite woman named Carly Hughes, approached with a clipboard and an air of nervous formality. She looked barely 30, with a high bun of tight black curls and round glasses that kept slipping down her nose. "Detective?" she asked, hesitating slightly. "They're ready for the unveiling. You're expected to say a few words." Michael gave a tired smile. "I'm not great with speeches." Carly shrugged with a grin. "That's all right. Just stand there and look heroic. The dog will do the rest." He chuckled softly, then whistled low. Bruno rose, stretched, and padded beside him as they followed Carly toward the modest crowd gathering near a newly cleared plaza overlooking the harbor. A bronze statue stood draped beneath a dark cloth. It wasn't large, but it was powerful. The figure depicted a German shepherd in mid-stride, ears alert, muscles taut, head slightly turned as if listening for something only he could hear. When the cloth was pulled back, applause rippled through the group. Reporters snapped photos, children pointed, and older dock workers nodded in solemn approval. A plaque at the base read, "Bruno, Defender of the Port. Loyalty is not taught, it is born." Michael kept his hands in his pockets, saying little. He didn't need to speak. Bruno's presence beside him said everything that mattered. Later that afternoon, Michael drove west of town, away from the buzz and ceremony, to a weathered single-story house with a wraparound porch framed by pots of lavender and wind chimes that danced in the breeze. His mother, Patricia Lawson, stood waiting at the door. A short woman with the silver-white curls and knobby fingers that had spent years quilting and gardening, she wore a loose-knit cardigan and slippers. Her smile wavered as she opened the door. "You look tired," she said. Michael kissed her cheek. "It's been a week." She poured them both sweet tea and sat him down in her sun-drenched kitchen, where the walls were lined with faded family photos and a yellowed calendar from 3 years ago still hung above the stove. He told her everything, not just about the bust or the grenades or the fog-drenched chase through the docks, but about Sam, about Bruno's instincts, about the moment the grenade dropped and didn't go off. Patricia listened without interruption, her hands wrapped around her mug. "I knew there was a reason you couldn't sleep," she murmured at the end. "And now?" "I think I might sleep tonight," Michael replied, smiling faintly. She reached over and rested her hand over his. "You're your father's son." Back at the shipyard, a new chapter had begun. Sam wore a clean uniform, now dark blue coveralls with the city's Port Authority badge stitched to his shoulder. His limp was still there, and the scar near his temple hadn't faded, but he stood taller. He laughed more. He helped supervise repairs on a newly assigned patrol boat, and every so often he paused to scratch Bruno's ear when the dog dropped by during Michael's check-ins. For Sam, it wasn't just work, it was redemption. A chance to rebuild not just machines, but himself. Anna, too, found change. She had been reassigned to day shifts after a quiet conversation with her superior likely pushed along by Michael behind the scenes. It meant she got to walk her son, Leo, to school in the mornings. Leo, a wiry 8-year-old with a mop of auburn curls and a habit of misplacing his backpack, had taken an instant liking to Bruno and often asked if he could borrow the dog for his math tests. "I think I'd do better with a hero next to me," he reasoned one morning as Anna packed his lunch. Bruno became a fixture at the docks and in the neighborhood. He didn't bark much, but his presence was a comfort. Shopkeepers left bowls of water by their doors. Children sketched him on the sidewalk with chalk. Once a sailor brought him a fillet of smoked trout and saluted before leaving. The city had been shaken, but now it stood steadier. Michael remained cautious. He knew the tendrils of the network they had helped uproot might reach farther than anyone realized. But for now, peace held. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the harbor turned gold, Michael sat on a bench near the statue of Bruno. The real dog lay beside him, tail flicking at flies. He pulled a small leather notebook from his coat, a habit he'd picked up recently. Inside were scribbles, case notes, and now, thoughts that had nothing to do with work. He wrote something simple. "Sometimes, all it takes is one dog to remind a city it still has a heart." And Bruno, sensing something weighty in the quiet, nudged his hand. "Sometimes, it takes a storm to reveal who we truly are, and sometimes it takes a loyal dog to guide us back to the light." This story reminds us that miracles don't always come with thunder or angels in the sky. Sometimes they come with muddy paws, quiet loyalty, and the courage to keep going when the world turns cold. Bruno was more than just a canine. He was a sign that even when we feel forgotten, we are not alone. That somewhere in the noise, God is still watching, still moving hearts, still sending help in the form we least expect. Maybe today, someone out there is tired. Maybe you're carrying more than anyone knows. But like Michael, Sam, and Bruno, you're not done yet. There's purpose in your pain. There's light ahead, and sometimes, the smallest act of faith can change everything. If you believe in second chances, in loyalty, in quiet miracles, comment Amen below. Share this story with someone who needs hope today. Subscribe for more powerful stories of faith, love, and redemption. Drop a comment. Where are you watching from, and what part of this story touched your heart? May God bless you and guide your path, just as He guided Bruno to be a hero. Amen.
There shouldn't be a puppy 1,000 feet from shore, but there he was, tied to a surfboard, barely moving, just drifting with the current, waiting for something or someone. I froze. At first, I thought it was debris, a broken white board bobbing in the swell, but then a gust rolled it slightly and I caught sight of a shape, small, curled, unmoving. Through my binoculars, I saw wet fur clinging to fragile bones. It was a German Shepherd puppy. My name's Cole. I've been a beach rescue officer in Santa Cruz, California for 15 years. I've seen everything. Riptides, shark bites, even drownings. But never this. Never a puppy left to die, roped to a shattered surfboard and set adrift like garbage. The morning sun was harsh against the ocean's surface, casting bright glares across the waves. But nothing could blind me to what I saw out there. The puppy's head barely lifted as the current carried him further. I swear I saw his eyes, swollen and crusted with salt, scan the coastline. He was waiting, hoping. "Dispatch, I've got a code red," I said into my radio. "Puppy spotted at sea. Repeat, puppy, tied to debris about 1,000 feet out, requesting immediate boat launch." The lifeguard tower was silent for a beat before the voice crackled back. Confirming, "A puppy?" Confirmed. "He's alive, but not for long." It took less than 2 minutes for the rescue boat to hit the water, but it felt like hours. I never took my eyes off him. The surfboard dipped and rose with each swell. I kept whispering, "Hold on, buddy, just hold on." Waves crashed behind me. Tourists stood frozen near their beach towels, watching in disbelief. A few started filming. I didn't care. Let the world see this. Let them see what someone did to a 3-month-old German Shepherd puppy. The boat reached him. I watched as Officer Ramirez leaned over and scooped him up. He didn't struggle. He didn't bark. He just sagged into her arms like a discarded rag. "Got him," she shouted into the radio. "He's weak, breathing, covered in salt. No tags, ropes on his torso. He's ice cold." I ran to meet them at the pier. The second I saw him up close, something broke in me. He looked like he'd been out there for days. His black and tan coat was crusted white with dried ocean spray. His legs were limp, his tiny paws raw and cracked. I reached out slowly, my voice barely a whisper. "Hey, little guy, you're safe now." He twitched. His nose nudged my hand, then fell limp again. We rushed him to the vet clinic in the rescue van. They took him straight into emergency. I stayed in the waiting room, gripping the leash that had been tied around his body like a belt. My jaw clenched, my stomach twisted. Someone left him out there, on purpose. But why? And how long had he been drifting, waiting for someone who might never have come? The vet's face said it before her words did. "He's severely dehydrated," she murmured, pulling her gloves off. "Saltwater exposure, hypothermia, extreme fatigue, no microchip, no ID. He's lucky he made it to shore." Lucky. I stared through the glass at the tiny figure lying on the warming pad, his chest barely rising under a silver thermal blanket. They'd hooked him up to fluids and a slow IV drip. His paws were bandaged. His eyes, those empty, salt-stung eyes, remained half shut, as if the world had asked too much of him already. This German Shepherd puppy had been adrift on a surfboard in the Pacific Ocean, and no one had come looking. "He must have been out there for more than a day," she said quietly. "Based on the salt damage and his electrolyte levels, it's a miracle he didn't drown. A miracle. But miracles don't tie puppies to boards. People do." I sat outside the clinic in the van for over an hour, staring at the ocean like it might offer me answers. How could someone do that? This wasn't an accident. The knots had been tight, deliberate. He hadn't slipped onto that board and floated out by chance. Someone put him there, left him, to die, and yet, he held on. A tech came out, cradling a tiny bundle in a towel. "He's stable enough to move," she said. "You said you were with Beach Rescue?" I nodded. "Could you take him to Brave Shelter in Santa Cruz? They're expecting him." "We've done what we can for now." I drove in silence. Every time I glanced at him in the rearview mirror, I felt a knot rise in my throat. He didn't whimper, didn't cry. He just blinked, slow, deliberate, and watched the sky through the van window like he still wasn't sure this was real. At the shelter, the intake team was gentle. They named him Maverick. "Seems fitting," one of them smiled. "He made it back from the ocean." But when they tried to place him in the recovery kennel, he dug his paws into my arm. Weak as he was, he whimpered and pulled toward me. His heart raced under the towel, his breath hitched. "He's afraid," I said. Maybe he thinks you're the one who saved him," the staffer replied. "No, that puppy saved himself. He clung to a shattered surfboard, survived days alone at sea, fought against the current and cold with nothing but instinct and silent hope. And now he was here, barely, but here. The shelter team gave me space. I sat on the floor beside his kennel for hours that night, just breathing with him. I didn't speak. I just listened to the tiny sounds he made in sleep, to the twitch of his paws like they still remembered waves. I didn't know why, but I couldn't leave. I couldn't let him wake up alone because somewhere out there, someone made a choice to throw away a life. And I wasn't going to let Maverick believe the whole world agreed. He screamed in his sleep, not a bark, not a whine, a high, panicked yelp, like he was drowning again, this time in dreams. I jolted upright, heart pounding. It was just after 3 a.m. The shelter lights were dimmed, the halls quiet, but Maverick thrashed inside his kennel, legs kicking at invisible waves. His bandaged paw struck the metal door with a hollow clang. Hey, buddy, I whispered, dropping to my knees. You're not out there anymore. He didn't wake up. He couldn't. His body was still too weak to pull him out of it. I opened the kennel, slid my arms under him, and lifted him onto my lap. He weighed next to nothing. Every bone pressed against my chest. His breathing hitched, and slowly, he calmed. And then, as I held him there on the shelter floor, something happened I'll never forget. He licked my hand. Just once. A single trembling touch of his tongue against my skin. Like a question. Like he was asking, "Can I trust you?" I didn't speak. I just nodded and kept holding him. The shelter staff found us like that in the morning. I was stiff, half asleep, still cradling him. "I think he's picked his person," one of the techs smiled gently. I didn't answer. I couldn't. There was a lump in my throat I didn't know how to swallow. They gave me clearance to stay close during his early recovery. Not adoption yet, but they made space. I moved him to a quieter room, sat with him through feedings, held the bowl while he licked weakly at the wet food, brushed out the salt and sand from his coarse black and tan coat. He didn't bark, not once, but he watched everything, watched the door, the window, the sky. Every time I stepped away, his breathing sped up. He'd press his head against the kennel bars, eyes wide, body trembling. I started talking to him more. "Tide's low today, buddy. Cloud cover's moving in. Might rain. You're safe now." He didn't understand the words, but maybe he understood the tone, the promise. Because one day, 4 days after they pulled him off that surfboard, he stood, just for a second, on trembling legs. He wobbled, collapsed, but then tried again and again. By the 5th time, he took 2 steps, just 2, toward me. My chest cracked open. "Good boy," I breathed, kneeling. "That's it, Maverick. Come on." He took 1 more step and collapsed into my arms, buried his face into my shirt, and finally, let out a tiny, broken sigh, like something in him had loosened, like maybe for the first time he believed he was going to live. He was still paddling in his sleep. Even on solid ground, wrapped in a soft blanket, Maverick's legs twitched in slow, panicked strokes, like he was trying to swim his way back to life. Every few hours, his body would jolt, like a wave had just pulled him under. I knew that kind of fear, the kind that crawls into your bones and never fully leaves. When I was 9, both my parents drowned off the coast of Big Sur. Riptide. No warning. I was the only one pulled out alive. I never went back in the water until I turned 18, until I decided to fight the thing that took everything from me and joined beach rescue. But Maverick, he never chose this fight. Someone else tied those knots. Someone else made him drift, alone, for what must have felt like forever. And still, he fought. I'd seen puppies give up for less, but not him. Not this 3-month-old German Shepherd puppy, half-starved and salt-burned, who still pressed his fragile weight into me like I was something worth holding on to. That afternoon, the rain hit Santa Cruz like a curtain, thick, steady. The shelter was quiet, most volunteers gone. I sat on the floor beside Maverick, legs crossed, his blanket spread out between us. "You know," I said softly, "some people think surviving is just luck, but you're the one who held on." He blinked up at me. His eyes, those deep, storm-soaked eyes, didn't flinch. And then he tried again. 1 paw, shaky, then another. He stood. His legs wobbled like kelp in the current, but he didn't collapse. Not this time. He took a step, then another, and stopped, his chest rising and falling like he just climbed a mountain. I didn't breathe. He looked straight at me and moved forward. 3, 4 steps, then stumbled right into my lap. I caught him before he fell. I hadn't smiled in years, not really, but something broke loose in my chest, like a knot finally untied. "You stubborn little wave rider," I whispered, laughing through tears. "You really want to walk again, don't you?" He licked my chin. We sat there together, Maverick curled against my chest, the rain tapping the windows behind us. I didn't want to move, didn't want to break the moment. I asked the shelter director the next day, "Can I foster him?" She raised an eyebrow. "You? Cole, You live in a 400 square foot apartment above a surf shop. I'll sleep on the couch. He gets the bed. She smiled. We'll start the paperwork. But even as hope flickered in my chest, I wondered, was I really doing this? Could I give this puppy more than just rescue? Could I give him a life? And was I ready to let someone back into mine? He wouldn't sleep unless my hand touched his fur. The first night I brought Maverick home, I cleared out the corner of my bedroom, laid down blankets, a soft cushion, his food and water bowls. But when I turned off the light, he panicked. Not loud, not wild. Just this soft, heart-tearing whimper that rose from somewhere deep inside him. I turned the lamp back on. He was sitting upright, shaking, staring at the door like it might vanish at any second, like he was waiting to be left again. I sat down beside him on the floor. He pressed into me immediately, crawling halfway into my lap. So that's where he slept, curled at my feet, one paw stretched out until it touched my leg. Even then, he dreamed of water. Every night, soft paddling movements, faint whimpers. Once, he let out this desperate little gasp like he was going under again. I'd wake up and whisper, "You're not out there anymore, buddy. I've got you." But I wasn't sure he believed it yet. He followed me everywhere. If I moved to the kitchen, he padded after me, slow and cautious on those still tender paws. If I stepped into the shower, he waited right at the door, nose pressed to the glass. His eyes never stopped searching. I started taking him to the beach before sunrise. Quiet, no tourists, just sea mist and low tide. I thought maybe being near the ocean would be too much for him. But Maverick surprised me. He didn't bark, didn't panic. He just stood there on the damp sand, staring out at the horizon, ears perked like he was listening to something only he could hear. And then, after a long, still moment, he sat. I sat beside him. Neither of us said anything. We just watched the tide come in. That's when I realized we weren't just surviving, we were healing. Together. But still, every night, the dreams came. He'd curl up under the window just inches from my bed and his body would twitch. His breathing would quicken. Sometimes he'd yelp, short and broken, like he was being pulled back into that current. I'd wake up, slide down to the floor, and hold him until the storm passed. He'd nestle under my arm like it was his only raft. And I'd whisper the same promise each time. "You're safe now. You're never going back there." But deep down, I wondered, could Maverick ever truly forget? Could a German Shepherd puppy who was thrown to the sea ever learn to sleep without fear? By the end of the first week, he was walking beside me without a leash, not far, just inside the house, then along the hallway of the shelter, then finally down the ramp to the sand. It was early. The kind of early when fog hangs low like breath on a mirror and the gulls haven't started screaming yet. Maverick padded slowly beside me, ears twitching at every whisper of the wind. His nose worked overtime, so many new scents. Salt, kelp, driftwood, life. We stopped where the sand met the ocean. The tide was pulling out, leaving behind long silver ribbons of foam. He froze. The waves lapped forward, hissing softly, and Maverick shrank back, tail tucked. He didn't growl, didn't bark, but I saw the shift in his body, how it locked up, like every nerve remembered what the sea had done to him. I crouched beside him, let him lean into me. "You don't have to touch it," I said quietly. "Not today." He looked up at me. Those eyes, dark as wet stone, held something ancient. Not fear. Not really. It was deeper than that. It was memory. This beach wasn't just a beach to him. It was the thing that almost took his life. He stepped forward, just one shaky paw print in the damp sand, then another. We walked slowly, parallel to the waterline, far enough to keep him dry, close enough for him to hear it, smell it, know it. He didn't run. He didn't play. But he didn't retreat either. That alone felt like a victory. The surf rolled in and out. I let him set the pace. When he stopped, I stopped. When he sat, I sat. When he turned to look at the waves again, I followed his gaze, not saying a word. He sniffed the wind, tilted his head, then lay down beside me and rested his chin on his paws, and for a long time we just sat. He never took his eyes off the ocean. I knew what he was asking. Can I trust it again? Maybe not yet, but he was there, awake, present, not in a dream, not drifting. That night, he didn't whimper. He slept soundly, stretched out at the foot of my bed, paws twitching with the soft rhythm of a dream I couldn't see. But when I leaned over and whispered, "You okay, Maverick?" his tail gave one small thump against the blanket. Maybe he wasn't running from the sea anymore. Maybe he was starting to face it. The next morning, he walked straight to the water. No hesitation, no glance back. The leash hung loosely in my hand, but I didn't need it. Maverick was focused, ears forward, head low, nose twitching as he moved closer to the waves. The surf was mild, just a lazy pulse against the shore, but every time it hissed forward, he stopped and studied it like it was alive. I stayed still, didn't call to him, didn't coax. This had to be his moment. He stepped closer. One paw in the wet sand, then another. The ocean kissed his toes. He flinched, but didn't move away. His eyes locked on the water, chest rising and falling like the tide. The memory was still there. I could see it. But this time, something else pushed through. Bravery, curiosity. And then he took another step. The water lapped over his paws, swirling through the fur. He didn't run, just stood there, letting it soak him. My throat tightened. 3 weeks ago, this German Shepherd puppy was found tied to a surfboard, drifting alone in open sea. Now he was walking toward it, facing it, choosing it. "Maverick," I whispered, more to myself than to him. He turned, just slightly, and looked back at me. Not scared, not seeking approval, just checking, as if to say, "I'm still here. I made it. I'm not going back, but I'm not afraid anymore." I couldn't help it. I dropped to one knee, arms open. He trotted toward me, still a little clumsy, but stronger with every step, and buried his head against my chest. We sat there for a long time, his wet paws pressed against my legs, both of us watching the waves. Later that afternoon, I brought him with me to the station. Not for a shift, just to visit. The team already knew him from the rescue, but now he walked through the place like he belonged, like he remembered. He sniffed the gear, the radios, the sand-covered boots by the door. One of the guards tossed him a treat. He caught it midair and wagged his tail for the first time. "Looks like he's applying for the job," someone laughed. I smiled, but I couldn't stop thinking, could he really? Could this German Shepherd puppy once left to die become part of something bigger? Not just survive, but serve? Not just be saved, but save others? I didn't have the answer. But Maverick, he was already writing it with every step he took. It happened so fast, I barely understood what I was seeing. We were finishing our walk along the south end of the beach, the quiet side, where the cliffs lean in close and the rocks break the tide. I had Maverick beside me, no leash, just trust. He was sniffing seaweed tangled in a bit of driftwood when I heard it. A sharp cry, high-pitched, panicked. I turned and saw a little girl, maybe 5 or 6, standing ankle-deep in the water near the edge of a tide pool. She was reaching down toward something, yelling, but her foot slipped on the slick rock and she stumbled, falling straight toward the edge. The pool wasn't deep, but the drop was jagged and the swell had just started to rise. One hard fall on those rocks could do real damage. I opened my mouth to shout, but Maverick was already moving. No command, no hesitation. He bolted forward like a fired arrow, paws flying over sand and stone. He cut across the beach in a perfect line and his body low, focused, faster than I'd ever seen him move. "Easy, Maverick," I called instinctively, but I didn't need to. He reached the girl just as she lost her balance. She slipped sideways, and he slid in under her, bracing with his chest as she tumbled into him. She collapsed right on top of him, and instead of panicking, he just stood there, steadied her, then let her grab onto his neck. She clung to him, wet, crying, shaking. I was already running. I splashed through the shallows, scooped her into my arms. She was scraped, but okay, more scared than hurt. Maverick stepped back, dripping, ears low, but eyes bright. The girl's father came rushing from the trail behind us. He fell to his knees, hugging her, thanking me, but I pointed at Maverick. "Don't thank me," I said. "He got there first." Later, back at the station, I sat in silence, watching Maverick nap on a blanket beside my locker. He'd never had training, no commands, no certification. He wasn't supposed to know what to do, but he knew. Something inside him still recognized danger, and still chose to act. The others were buzzing. Word traveled fast. One of the lieutenants walked past and muttered, "You sure he's not already part of the team?" I smiled, rubbing the back of Maverick's ears. He stirred, then nudged my hand with his nose. "Not yet," I said, "but maybe it's time we made it official." Because what he'd done today wasn't instinct. It was something more. This wasn't just a German Shepherd puppy that had survived. This was a pup who, when the moment came, remembered who he was meant to be. He wore the vest like it meant something. Bright orange, snug against his chest, with the black patch that read trainee. It was a bit too big for him still, but Maverick walked through the station like it was made for him, like he'd been waiting for this his whole life. Everyone noticed the change. He was still a puppy, just 4 months old, but there was a steadiness in him now, a quiet confidence. The way he sat near the shoreline, watching the waves roll in and out, scanning like a sentinel. The way he followed every movement, every whistle, every hand signal I gave him, even if he didn't always get it right. He wanted to understand. He wanted to help. And the team, they welcomed him like one of their own. We started slow, short walks around the gear bay, scent drills using old uniforms, gentle exposure to sirens and radios. He flinched at first, but only once. After that, he seemed to realize this wasn't danger. This was rhythm, structure, purpose. He thrived on it. He's not like most puppies, one of the guys said, kneeling to tie his boots as Maverick watched him intently. It's like he knows what this is. I nodded. Maybe he does. Every day he grew stronger. His coat thickened, shining in the sun. The cracked pads of his paws healed. His stride became fluid, his eyes sharper. But the thing that struck me most wasn't physical. It was how he stayed close. Always just a few feet from me. Watching, waiting, listening. One afternoon, we ran a beach drill, mock rescue with dummies. Maverick was supposed to stay back and observe. But when the victim was dragged from the water and a rescuer stumbled slightly on the wet sand, Maverick bolted in. He didn't bark. He didn't panic. He ran straight to the side of the downed responder and circled, sniffed, checked, then stood firmly between him and the water, body low, tail still, a shield. The whole beach went silent. "Okay," the captain muttered, half laughing, half in awe. He's not watching anymore. He's joining. That night, after everyone had gone home, I sat on the sand with Maverick beside me. The sky was streaked with gold and fading blue. Waves whispered to the shore. He rested his head on my knee. "You did good today," I said quietly. "You keep this up, you'll be part of the team for real." His tail brushed the sand twice. I thought about how far he'd come, from that drifting white surfboard to here, beside me, on steady ground. He still had the dreams. Some nights I'd wake to hear his paws twitch, a soft cry in his throat. But they were rarer now, softer, fading. And when I whispered, "You're safe," he'd calm again. I don't know if he'll ever forget what they did to him, but I do know this. He doesn't belong to the ocean anymore. He belongs here, with us. And he's ready for what comes next. The scream came just after noon. A child's voice, sharp, high, terrified, cut across the beach like a siren. I dropped the water bottle in my hand and spun toward the sound. 20 yards out, a boy, maybe 7, was flailing in the surf. He must have waded too deep. The tide had shifted fast, sneaky and strong. He was caught in the pull, his arms slapping against the water, mouth open in panic. I bolted. "Maverick, stay!" But he didn't. He was already gone. I barely saw the orange vest blur past me, just heard the pounding of paws and the splash as he hit the water. He swam like he was born for it, smooth, fast, straight into the current. The boy went under. My chest seized. I tore across the sand, diving in as Maverick reached the spot. His nose dipped, vanished below the surface, then rose again, eyes scanning. And then I saw it. The boy's hand reaching up. Maverick surged forward, caught the boy's sleeve gently in his teeth and pulled. His body twisted against the wave, positioning himself between the boy and the open sea. By the time I reached them, Maverick was guiding him back, keeping the boy's head above water with his own shoulder. I swam beside them, one arm around the child, the other hand gripping Maverick's vest. We hit shore as a crowd rushed toward us, parents, lifeguards, stunned onlookers. The boy sobbed against my chest. His mother scooped him up, crying so hard she could barely speak, and Maverick, he just stood there, dripping, breathing hard, sand clinging to his soaked fur, silent. He didn't bark, didn't look for praise. He just looked at me. And for the first time since the day I pulled him from the surf, I cried, not from fear, from something bigger. Pride, awe, relief, love. Because this German Shepherd puppy, this half-starved, half-drowned soul someone tied to a surfboard and left to die, had just saved a life. He didn't hesitate. He didn't think twice. He just ran toward the water. The very thing that almost killed him. He faced it. And he won. Later, back at the station, the chief shook my hand and said, "He's not a trainee anymore." I looked down at Maverick, curled at my feet, his eyes already drifting closed. "No," I said softly. "He's one of us now. And maybe more than any of us, because he reminded me that the things that nearly break us can also make us who we're meant to become. The photo went viral within hours. Someone had captured the moment perfectly. Maverick, soaked and windblown, standing at the edge of the surf, vest clinging to his chest, ears pinned back, eyes locked on the horizon like he was still on duty. The rescued boy's hand was resting on his shoulder. "Surf Dog Hero," the headline read. Local news picked it up first, then regional stations. By nightfall, national media were calling the station. Everyone wanted to talk to the puppy lifeguard, but Maverick didn't care about cameras. He cared about the job. He kept patrolling the beach the next morning like nothing had changed. Same focus, same calm, same quiet strength. But for me, it changed everything. I took him to the shelter that day, not as a visitor, not as a foster, as family. "I want to make it official," I said, looking the director in the eye. "He's not just a dog, he's my partner." She smiled, tears brimming. We already knew. The paperwork was quick. I signed the last form with Maverick curled up at my feet, tail sweeping slowly side to side as if he already knew what was happening, as if he'd been waiting for this day his whole life. Back home, I moved his bed from the corner of my room to the center, right next to mine. But that night, he didn't use it. He jumped up and curled into the crook of my legs, head resting on my thigh. I let him stay. He'd earned it. The department held a small ceremony on the sand. Nothing fancy, just our team, a few local kids, and one very proud German Shepherd puppy with a brand new patch on his vest, Rescue K9. I knelt beside him as they clipped it on. "You did it, Maverick," I whispered. "You made it all the way back." He turned his head and licked my cheek once. A simple thank you. Later, as the sun dipped low behind the waves and we walked the shoreline together, just me and him, no leash, no words, I looked down at the puppy who had taught me more about strength than any storm ever could. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was leading, healing, becoming. Not bad for a little guy someone once gave up on. And now, no matter what came next, we'd face it together, as a team. Some stories don't begin with hope. They begin with silence, with betrayal, with a German Shepherd puppy left alone at sea, tied to a broken surfboard, drifting further from the world with every wave. But Maverick's story didn't end there, because someone saw him, someone stopped, someone chose not to look away, and that changed everything. This little guy's journey from abandonment to rehabilitation shows how important nonprofit rescue groups really are. Without the emergency vet, without the shelter, without the people who stayed late and cared enough to hold him through the nightmares, none of this would have happened. And now? Now, Maverick saves others. He didn't just overcome what was done to him, he transformed it. Fear became courage, trauma became instinct, isolation became purpose. Caring for a rescued puppy is more than love. It's responsibility, it's pet care. It's waking up at 3 a.m. when the dreams come back. It's whispering, "You're safe now," 1,000 times until one day, they believe you. If Maverick's story touched your heart, please share this video, because every time someone sees it, another pair of eyes might open, another heart might soften, another puppy might be saved. These animals aren't broken. They're just waiting for someone to believe in them. Join our Brave Paws family. Be their voice. Be their hope.